All right. Now we are recording. All right. So I have the assignment is shape and form, and as I talked about here, starting with this shape of a circle and then applying shading creates form. And to be clear about that, there's a nice dark pencil. Shape equals two-dimensional, form equals three-dimensional. Try to make this a little bigger. Okay, good. So to go back to that, if you're drawing out these 4x4, so the initial drawings of eight 4x4 inch compositions. A sheet of this is 8.5 by 11. Yeah, this is an 8.5 by 11 book, so I can only get 2 per page. There we go. And if I so desire, I'm going to ink that. Okay. Okay, so shape, beginning with, let's see, if you have shape, let's make something a little bit more interesting. I'm going to say, so elements of perspective, I'll say there's a point of convergence out of the picture there. So you can see this, and I will tape this down so that I don't move it, so you can see it. Okay, so here I might do something like this, cross these. We talked about creating the appearance of depth. One way that you can do that for sure is to overlap the shape. That way, if these shapes overlap, I'm already creating the appearance of depth. And I think I might have this one come out. Now you might also just trial and error. It's possible you would like put one in a place where you don't actually, where you might have to fix it. I don't know exactly That's okay. Maybe I have like a partial thing going there. Okay. All right. So I've got that. And if I'm going to say light is just coming directly from above, I can sketch in some shadow. So light on top, shadow on the bottom. Down here it gets a little trickier. If I want to show that these are kind of like curving, kind of tube-like, I can curve the shading, which you sometimes you just have to change the direction as you go to give it the impression of dimension. This is already starting to look more three-dimensional. This one, if I've got like this one here and light's coming that way, I mean, it might not be that this is like a single source. It might just be that there's like a light source way above and light is coming down uniformly. But I think I still might look this one here since I really just see the bottom of it. Let there be like light on the sides and shadow in the middle. That's actually a pretty effective thing for, showing dramatic lighting. I remember reading comic books and noticing it when, like, if they would have like a light right down the center of someone, like a shadow right down the center of someone's face and light on the sides, which made it pretty clear that light was coming from behind the figure. And that's a little like more specific. That's really just good for dramatic effect. And it's a good idea to be careful that you're not always doing the same thing, like always lighting characters or objects in the same way because it's familiar and you know it. And sometimes when you do things that are familiar, you don't really think about other ways to do them until somebody points it out to you. So I remember that was, I guess, the good thing about art school critiques later on when I was, like second, third year of college. The people would say like you always do this one thing in your work and you don't notice it, and it's kind of embarrassing. You think, oh my God, my work is predictable, and no one wants their work to be predictable. So, because then anybody can figure it out, and then people who don't know anything about it are telling you about your work, and you're like, oh my God, that's terrible. You don't want that. That's pretty good. These, I think, this one's okay. I think, so similar with this, when you're not going to have the contour line up here. So what I'm going to say you can do is have this solid. Let's get a better pencil for that. Better pencil here. Oh, shoot. phone went to sleep. Darn it, sorry about that. I forgot to change that. Just a moment. I'm going to stop sharing that for a sec. I'm going to change this in the settings. It never shuts off. Okay, let's go back to that. Sorry for that little glitchy this morning with the devices. All right. So where I was, there. Okay. So I'm filling this in. There we go. Now I've got what looks like some depth to it. I will use my marker. You can do this if you've got the brush marker, use it. You can, if a Sharpie is what you're using, use that. But we need to ink these so you can see them with the same amount of contrast that you're going to get in the finished version. And I'm getting a little bit messy there, but oh well. This is just like a concept drawing or an initial study or sketch, whatever you want to call it. And if it's really something if it's a drawing meant as a preparatory drawing for something that will be executed in a more finished way, I usually think of it as a study. There, that's good. I can see it. And yeah, so I'm just going to use these curving hatch marks. So when I draw this out, I'm thinking about the marks I'm using for the shading as really like clear or discrete, meaning concrete, or meaning solid. Or they're all separate from each other. Did I write? Oh, I wrote that in the wrong. Can't see it. Discrete. The term discrete, meaning like don't tell anybody, is spelled like that. That's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about that one. Now here, where I have the black background coming up to the edge of this object, if I shade right up all like solidly all the way up to that, I'm just going to lose the edge entirely. So we're going to leave a little here. This would be a good, this is a drawing that if I like this well enough as a possible candidate for the finished version of the drawing. This one I definitely want to draw larger, like draw out at the 8x8 scale, which is the finished scale. Because like some of this detail in here, I need to be able to see how am I doing that. And really the way for me to know would be to draw this larger, because then I can make all this, make these marks larger. But I want to make sure that my edges are showing up through contrast, not just with the contour line, because I can't really have the contour line in the finished version. I don't want you to just use cut a shape of paper to be a contour line. You're defining edges with contrast is the way, it's how we see things. So it tends to lend a little more realism to what you're drawing or what you're depicting, even if what you're depicting isn't real at all. I mean, I don't know where this is. I'm inventing this space in this drawing. This could be a close-up of something that is real in the world, something organic, something under the ocean, something under a microscope. I don't know. I'm just kind of pulling it out of my head. But the more realistically I can shade it, the more convincing it is as an image and the more compelling it is. So that's pretty good. I don't mind that one. So I used perspective in a sense where I had like a point of convergence that was a little bit out of the picture, which is fine. It can be. This is just kind of frames it. This kind of like says the viewer's over here, and this is to the left of your, this image is to the left of your view. So, instead of having it just like this one here, but just like horizon line, vanishing point, these edges going to the vanishing point. This is also work. This one is fine. I think I might. Oops, sorry, that's out of the frame. I'm gonna work on this one. I'm gonna work on shading that. That one, that's pretty good. This one here. Watch out, the marker. You'll see the marker bleeds through a little bit. This is the sheet that I had underneath it. There's a little bit of marker coming through. If you're working on a table at home that is not a beat up old table, I would put an extra piece of paper down, a barrier sheet underneath your work, so that you're not find that oh my God, you just got stuff all over the table. The marker is alcohol based, so if you have some rubbing alcohol at home or something like that, try a little bit of that on a cotton swab, and then just normal cleaning solution to clean the residue of the alcohol off the surface. But that's pro tip right there. But if you're living at home with your parents or other family members or roommates, and you're working on a surface that other people use that matters to other people, put a barrier sheet down so that if you're using marker, so that you're not going to stain it and goof it up. Or if you do, know how to clean it up. Don't just walk away from messes you've made. That was my brother. He used to do things like take a radio, I wonder what's inside, and he would take the whole thing apart leave the guts of the radio all over the floor in the living room, and then go, oh, that's what's inside. And then he'd just leave. Then I'd hear my mom like, Sean. It was always pretty funny because like he just like it didn't ever occur to him like clean it up. All right, enough about that. So now this guy here. I think I might I want something like that cropped there. Okay, so I want this, yeah, this is okay. I'm going to make that one larger. I don't really like those two being the same scale. I want to show some variety here. So these spheres look maybe like they're floating. So this is kind of like just some invented architectural space. Not sure about that though. We'll see. Not sure about the way this is cropped. You know, sometimes if you have like something that goes out of the picture and you can't really see how it ends, it might seem like it just goes on forever. It's kind of like a little bit of, this can be a little visually disturbing. I remember I did this, like, there's a print in school, a woodcut, and this one figure had like, there's like a group of figures, and one figure had his like arms out, and one arm was just like going out of the frame, and it really did look like his arm might go on forever, because you don't see the end of it. So the nice thing about this is I can share with you all those pitfalls and things I experienced as a student. Now, this for this small drawing, this like brush nib might be a little bit strong for that. It might be just like not make a small enough mark. I think I am going to do that. I'm going to put the contour line on there so I can see it. Now this metal ruler has a cork back, so it lifts the edge of it off. You'll find that with triangles for drafting, they have an inking edge where they have like the edge is actually a little thinner and lifted off the surface. That way, when you ink with it, the ink doesn't kind of crawl underneath and get sort of like blobby. That would happen like if I had this. It might happen. Let's see. I try doing like a line there. Oh, that's okay. But it also gets, look what I just did to my scale. Bad. I've seen it happen with some inks. You draw a line with a straight edge and it kind of gets kind of underneath there, and then it smears when you pull the straight edge away. Something to avoid, to be sure. And some of that's just like old drafting stuff. You draft to learn how to draft and to learn the vocabulary of construction drawings when you go to do AutoCAD if you're an interior design or architecture student. But there are still architects and interior designers, just a few of them, who are old enough that they never learned any of the digital media like AutoCAD, but they're good enough at drafting that they still draft floor plans and elevations. That's a skill. I respect that. Oh well, that's All right, well, I'm just going to correct that in here. That's a little too... If I just carefully just use the end of that. Take that down a little too low. All right. Better. I think I'm just getting... Let's see. There we go. I think I had that a little out of balance. I'll put it back in. Okay, good. And then make you bigger. Good. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure you can see this clearly. I'm disappointed. I think I noticed that I had some apps crashing last night and this morning when I was trying to use them on my tablet. I think I might just need to go get a new one of those. Elliot, we'll come up this way. Look, here comes Elliot. Come here. Hey. Hey, goofball, come here. Here is my co-star. You cannot sit right there, though. Elliot, come on. No. Oh, man, you gotta shut right up there. Okay. Here. I'm sorry, I know you can't do it, though. No. Sorry, I'm at work. Stop. Little baby, you can't do that. Good. There, that's good. That's excellent. Just right there. No, he's gonna keep getting, he's gonna inch closer. As long as you guys can still see, that's good. Yeah, my little dude, you're pushing it. No. Okay. Just a little bit more that way. Hey, sorry. All right. Well, I guess that's not going to work. So you can see in those the project examples that are in Blackboard. I mean, ultimately, you're going to be cutting these out of black paper. So the shading has to be done in a way that it can be like small pieces of cut paper. I don't want you to go too crazy with like small pieces, but some people always do because it allows you to define light and shadow better when you have smaller pieces. All right, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to assume this is a darker.
Duffy,
Yeah.
sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but if you do go crazy, uh, which I hope I don't, with small pieces of cut paper, my question would be, how do those students who do it get it attached? You know, I mean, even my fingers aren't that big, but I would think it'd be so hard to manipulate.
You use a knife. Now it can be hard to
But
do it. The smaller they are, like it's true. Like getting the adhesive on the back of the piece of paper and sticking it.
that's what I mean, getting them into position,
Yeah.
not so much creating them and making them tiny, but getting them to.
Well, to place them. When I say you use the knife, what I mean is you take the knife and you stab the little piece and pick it up with the knife.
Okay.
and then you place, then you like, getting the adhesive on it could be the hardest thing. If you're using something like the glue stick or the rubber cement, you just get a little tiny bit on it, and you put it down. Usually, like you would take here, like a tiny piece like that. I can pick it up and stick it through there, and you're not going to see that little, the cut or the little hole there. And then when you go to put it down, you take a pencil with an eraser, put it down, and then pick this up. And if you've got the adhesive on the back, it'll just stay where you put it.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but that's the process. Is you pick it up with the knife, and then you place it down with the knife, and then you hold it with an eraser and take the eraser away.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. That's a good question. And it's actually not a bad idea to think about. I mean, you kind of do need to think about how you are creating this shading with paper as you're drawing it, so that you remember to shade it in a way that looks kind of like they might be little pieces of paper. Otherwise, you could, that's why I want you to use a pen or marker to do this, because then you will, if you were to shade it beautifully with pencil, it really would be that wouldn't be something that you could actually use. Because, that's just a completely different appearance. So like this vertical surface, I want to make it look like it's got some shadow on it. Maybe. Sometimes your decisions are not always going to be successful. And with this, with these surfaces, I'm trying to make the marks go in the direction of the surface. So if this is a vertical surface, I'm using the vertical marks. I could make marks in perspective, but I would probably not want to do diagonal marks here, because it might make it it might make it less clear what this is and what the form is. This one here, I might just do a few things there. And on the spheres, I'm curving it. Oh, the sweetest little cat. You know that? I'm very happy that you like cuddling, but you can't do it right now. Thank you. Oh. There we go. Okay. I think I might just take this and move it here. This one. So if you missed it Tuesday, this demonstration of you start with a circle. By the way, nobody draws perfect circles. Some people get better at it, but being able to draw a perfect circle is really just not. It is almost never the objective of an artist or a designer. If you need a really perfect circle and you're doing something for design, you get a circle template and you trace it. but this doesn't really require it. So if I've got this shape, so the shape is a circle, then I apply shadow and I create form. This is actually a pretty good exercise to practice right here. And if this is a sphere sitting on the surface, maybe a shadow cast this way. Don't let the shadow come too high up. Maybe have the shadow come a little forward. This is like this curves away, and so if the light's coming down, it might, this little bit right here is going to cast a shadow. And then up here, I'm going to create that edge in the background with just some shading and contrast so that this edge is defined by the darkness here and then the light here. And then I might need to come back and put a little light back on that. Maybe a little bit of light down here, since on a surface, light will reflect off the surface and then back onto it in the shaded area. The darkest part of a shadow is usually in the middle here, somewhere off of this edge. I think that would include some shading down there. And a little bit of, like, sometimes in the drawing like this, sometimes you can keep a little bit of the contour line. But when you're looking at anything, any two things together, if you see an edge, one surface is lighter than the other. If you look at my hand on the paper, my hand is darker than the paper. Okay. This stuff here, leave those. This is like oranges in space. Why? I don't know. Nobody knows. Good. So is it helpful to watch me make these drawings?
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yes.
Very good. I mean, I'm confident that it is, otherwise I would be doing something different. But it's nice to hear from you that it is helpful, it is useful. So here with like some stipple shading, maybe stipple and scribble. So stipple is that. You're familiar with the Seurat painting at the Art Institute of Chicago, painted in the pointillist style of post-impressionism, which is kind of like a stylistic dead end, really. That was like Seurat's obsessiveness. That can be a way to build up form and shadow. It's slow as a drawing technique. The scribble is kind of like a quick, kind of like a frenetic scribble. It's not like just loops. It's just like, I'm trying to just kind of like wiggle this. It's kind of jittery in all areas. It tends to make it look a little bit more random and uniform.
So is the stippling more like dashes and dots?
Yeah, it's dots.
Okay.
Basically, like if you really like people, some people do it. They just do it with the point and make little tiny dots. I think like making it bigger. If I hit this like the point of this flattens and makes more of like an oval or brush stroke. But the effect is this, building this up in like really in points.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Now if you have on that on that point, haha, different elements of making an image. If you like break it down into like really like no, stop it, dang Elliot, little weirdo. He sees little pieces of paper and he wants to eat them, and then he'll get sick from eating things that are not food. And he likes tape, so he wants my drafting dot. Oh, yes, and my Dennis ate something in December that was not food and got sick, and we went to the doctor and they took x-rays and like, yeah, there's something in there, but fortunately it wasn't too big and he got rid of it. But when they eat something that's not food, the options are not good. Okay, so here, this is the most basic thing you can do to make an image is a point. I just made a drawing right there. It's not the most complicated drawing. It might not even be a very good drawing, but that is a drawing. And if you get into contemporary art, there's usually a little more to it. I mean, I would say there always is a little more to it, but minimalism says this can be a finished drawing. And I probably wouldn't, if I were doing this, I might think, okay, that's this point in one position. I would probably have like 100 little pieces of paper ready, and I would draw that point in different positions in all of them, and then I would probably exhibit them all together in a big grid on the wall. That is how I might use that. That's usually not even, but that's not even it, really. That's usually not enough. So a point is one basic element. Point, line, shape, and form. So there's point, there's line, and geometry tells you that a line is it's the shortest distance between 2 points. Geometry and art are not separate from each other. They really shouldn't be, but it's a long story of how the arts have been maligned in this country. Shape, if I enclose a shape with line, I guess I sort of enclose an area with line, I create shape. And then I make it more complex by adding more shape. Oop, I don't want to do that. To create something that is that appears as if it might be three-dimensional. And then, as we've been talking about, you need shading to really sell it. There. So the point, so I guess all that sort of made me think about, pointillism is points, and it is each little, in Seurat's painting, each little tiny brushstroke is this very simple act of painting or drawing. Okay. Da-da-da-da. So some of these little guys here, I've got to leave a little bit of an edge, light, out here, so that when I smooth the background, and when you have what really qualifies as big background imagery, like big background areas in your image, you can make it more solid. In some cases, you can just make it completely solid. Like these might just be big cut shapes of paper to fill in that dark void behind the objects. So here, so again, you're making 8 I'm just going to edit that one out. Small bits there. I think again, if some of the detail here, I would have to draw this larger at the 8x8 scale, and you're gonna redraw 3 of them at 8x8 inches. This is 4x4. This is just really like 25% of the area of an 8x8. There. And then I can erase the pencil and see. And you need to be able to erase the pencil and still see everything. That's usually, it's kind of it'll tell you. Sometimes you forget to shade something you forget to ink something, and then when you erase the pencil, you discover, oh, missed that one. Like here, I want to just clean that up a little bit. Right. But yeah, the 4x4 compositions will give you an idea of how the images are going to, how these compositions are going to work. So like right now I've got these two.
So I have a quick question. Like on example of this composition you were just doing, the sphere.
Yeah.
So would that be on a white paper, and everything else would be cut out of the black one?
Yes.
Okay, so the background would be like done, let's say, with some like little strips of black paper or something like this.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Essentially everything black marker is paper.
yes, that's a very good point. If you wanted to do this with cutting white paper and putting it down on black, you could, if that makes more sense to you. But the idea is that you're shading with the paper, really.
Okay.
And some of these like more like thin, like kind of like long thin paper strips. And you might do something like this. Tighten that. if I just kind of like take slices off of the end of that, get one more dot. There, hold that down. So I need to hold this. I'm going to hold this up here. Trying to be careful not to. I might have to take that a little higher. There. So that's how I might create those. Just take a piece of this paper down and just slice off of the edge. And if you wanted to cut really long ones, you can. And then slice pieces off like that. And if you needed to like make it, cut it right up, like have it placed right up to like an edge, then you can cut it off flat there. And there. Just position that by stabbing it and picking it up. You can see that is flat on the bottom. There. Yeah. And if you're doing, this can be a time-consuming process. So I would ask that you get through your drawings. This morning I'll make sure that there's a place to put your finished work. So that's the, let's see, so that's drawing, and that's a little bit about cutting the paper. If you're trying to cut little tiny pieces, if you want to cut smaller pieces, I want to caution you against making them too small, because then it's a little hard to handle them. If I have
the best and worst really better.
Cases like this, right? If you got your microphone on and you don't mean to have it on, check it. All right. So I cut a bunch of strips like that. Watch out, little baby. But I just like cut a little bit off the end there. Watch your fingers. Like that. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of random. It's a random shape. I'm not really trying to make a specific shape out of these. And then I suggest you find something to put them in so they don't just scatter all over your home. They will. I mean, this is a project I've been, when I first started teaching at Harrington Institute of Interior Design, that became Harrington College of Design, that unfortunately no longer exists. The ownership chose to close it. We used to teach this assignment, and students would tell me when they graduated, I still find little pieces of black paper like around the edges of the room that I worked in. So just keep them contained. Okay. Now, any questions yet? Or any more questions? No?
Sorry, yes. So the 4-inch, 8 compositions are in pencil and marker, correct?
Yes.
And then the 3 8-inch, more detailed ones that are selected are are they inked in marker or are
Yes.
they inked in something else?
You'll use marker for the larger drawings.
Okay, and then the final one, there's only one that's made out of cut paper, correct?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. I'm going to say drawings here. I guess when I think of them as they are compositions, but I'm going to say and then 1-inch collaged image chosen from your drawings. So 8 4x4 drawings that are a little, they're more like they're composition and studies for shading. And you'll take 3 of them and draw them at 8x8, working out finer detail on the shading. And we'll choose one of them that will be the 8x8 collaged image made from cut paper, and that is chosen from your drawings. That's what you're doing. And you have until, I'll get the due dates on the, as in the syllabus, not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday.
So one is going to be cut out of paper and rest is going to be free marker and 8 pencil.
So these are all, these are all drawings. I'm going to say these drawings, pencil and marker for both those. This, if you can shade them well enough with the pencil, you can just use the marker on the larger version, but it helps to see the contrast with the marker in the smaller ones. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyone have any drawings that they want to share with the group?
I actually have a question. If you, let me see. Can you see my camera?
Just a moment. Let me get my. I'm gonna stop sharing
Just have
my
a, I
phone.
just have a quick question. If
Yeah.
I do something like this, let's say it's supposed to be like a hand or something, and then I shade it and do it with that technique, would that be okay? Or you're looking for something more abstract?
I can't see your camera. I can't see your image.
Okay, now? Okay.
There you go. Yep. You can do that.
So I was thinking then, of course, I would just do like different techniques to like kind of shade it. So in a on the paper version that wouldn't have lines, like you say, just like playing with black and white.
Yep. Yeah, you could. I mean,
Okay.
in some cases, you could use like a thick shape for a contour, but I wouldn't want you to use just that.
Okay. Yeah.
So you could like have it like, some of the shading like where like it curves around from the bottom of the finger up. You could start with a like a thick black contour, but then shade up from it.
Okay. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be like geometrical or something. It can be something from
Yes,
the whatever around me.
yes, you can
It's
make it
like,
realistic, which is actually not a bad exercise because if you have that, like trying to simplify that, like, or sort of summarize what, like something realistic, it sort of forces you to like make like it forces you to get it down to what is essential to understand what it is.
yeah, because I was looking for inspiration. I'm like, huh, I'm looking at my hand. Okay, well,
Yeah,
laying on the paper,
yeah,
next to me.
it's good, but that's actually I think it's a really good idea.
Okay,
And
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. And some students have done that in the past where they make realistic looking, like they'll make a realistic looking image, um, and it'll be no, I want it there anyway. So it can be more. It's a little more forgiving if it's abstract, but if it's something specific like that's recognizable, then then you have to work harder to make sure that it does actually look like it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
Although, Duffy, couldn't you, if you're looking for inspiration, could a student, for example, take only the fingers of her hand that Claudia showed and then get rid of the thumb and everything else? And so it becomes abstract to other people, but it got you started from something realistic.
Yes, that's a very good point. A lot of abstraction starts with. I mean, like I find that in the study, like especially the early days of abstraction in the like the late 19th, early 20th century, a lot of abstraction is based on realistic imagery, and in some respects, it's still it still can be. But so you can start with like if you think about a finger, it is kind of like it's more like a cylinder. You could think of it more like a cylinder or like some cylindrical volume. And I want to show you this because you're making me think about this one. So these forms are not intended to be anything specific, but they imply a certain, like a sort of like a range of like origin.
Cactuses?
Cactuses, like, hot dogs. I don't know. It's like a whole bunch of different organic things that makes you think that it might have come from, which is, in abstraction, if there's something familiar for the viewer to hold on to, it's more comfortable, and you feel like you can, maybe engage with it a little bit better. I think non-objective, like geometric abstraction, can be a little more, like, a little more remote and chilly, where it's like, it's a square, I don't get it. And the point is that it is a square. So abstraction, so let's talk about abstraction a little bit, because, let's say like, George Brock, he is the, George Brock and Pablo Picasso were the two seemed like they were the primary artists that worked out Cubism. And if you look at, let's see here, like the Tate website is a legit website. The Tate is a gallery in London. So like that is Bottles and Fishes. That's a still life painting. So you can see where like the, a lot of the cubism, there's a lot to it. I mean, some of it is, it's about perception and what we see and how it can be organized in a way that is unique, like breaking it down into its geometric components, where you see, like, you sharpen edges, turn like a, like a highlight on a bottle into a rectangle or a triangle, and maybe it's, maybe it's part of a circle. But this kind of abstraction in Cubism is based on something that's realistic, and I find that that is true for a lot of it, a lot of different kinds of abstraction. This one here, I really like. There's something like the landscape paintings that Brock and Picasso made. Is this going to give me the whole thing? Oh, that's a big highlight. See the whole painting. Come on. The suspense is killing me. Okay, so do you see the landscape? I see the landscape. Does anyone else see landscape in this painting?
Yeah, I see like trees.
Yeah. So this is it's a view of a park, and this is at Saint Denis Cathedral. So you see that it looks like landscape with trees and a little bit of architecture in there. So why do this to it? It's kind of has a flatness to it. It's got depth and flatness. It's also a little chaotic and hard to, it's like, if you want to paint a landscape, why don't you just paint it clearly? This is it's a different idea about perception and image. Realism was first established really, really well by the Greeks about 2,500 years ago. And it was copied by the Romans. That ability to make that heightened reality was lost by the Europeans in the Middle Ages after Rome was destroyed and collapsed. And then it came back in like around 1400, 1500 in what is now Italy. They recaptured that ability to create like very realistic imagery, and then that sort of stayed as the standard, and then you got photography introduced in the middle of the 19th century, and so the realism became kind of oppressive because it's like once you do it, it's like, okay, now what? How much more realistic can we make it? And then the camera comes along and it's even more realistic, and so the need to make realistic paintings just kind of started to erode. And a lot of artists very quickly just like took this opening and started to create imagery. Like a painting is a creation. And if you can create anything you want to, why do you always just try to copy reality? Why don't you try to create images that is about a sensation, or an image that it's just about color, or it's about perception? That's what this is about. So when you're doing the drawings you're doing are, sorry about that. The drawings that you're doing are not really that far removed from something like cubism, because they are doing, they're showing this like transition of light and shadow. It's almost like this is like seen through some distorted glass. So that might help. Maybe that might help you to imagine, I guess, a solution, or the kinds of solutions that you're creating. All right. Well, I think that might be enough for drawings and demonstration. I can go on if there's something. Do you want more demo, or do you want to? Would you rather work and see me on Tuesday?
Actually, I have another question. I would prefer to work and see you on Tuesday, but I do have one question first if you have time.
Absolutely.
Okay, but does someone else want to jump in? If you guys do, go ahead.
Just go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Remember the image that you just showed us before the cubism thing? It was black and white and it kind of looked like hot dogs.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you don't go to the work to try to pull it up. But what I was trying to figure out is in the center of them, when they were really dark, before they sort of rolled to the side where you could see more white, what almost looked like solid black gave an idea of right in the middle of the thickness of a whole group of triangles layered on top of each other, or other geometric shapes, maybe squares or something. How did the student, if you look at the top row, from the corner at the top coming, the ones pointing down, and then you look at that thickest one kind of in the middle, do you think the student or whoever the artist was took like a thin piece of white and made it like a sliver or something to create that look?
No, that's just the spacing. I remember this one.
Okay, so you think they just truly did pile all the shapes on, and that was the paper, the white paper coming through?
Yes.
Okay, wow.
So she placed them. I mean, she got to where she was placing them down. You can see where there's just like black triangles with a little bit of light in between. And in some of them where it's piled up more, it looks a little bit more realistic. Where it's like, where it's kind of like, it's like where there's overlap a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's but yeah,
I mean,
this is all black.
I have to say, it seems so like it would be so hard.
It can
But
be.
I guess once you get going, you just figure
Yeah.
you can kind of shuffle it around a little bit. You
Yeah.
don't have to draw every teeny tiny
Right.
thing.
Good point. You also, like when you're doing, so similar to this, I think in terms of process, it's a good thing to remember that when you make the drawings, that's your guide. But then when you're making it in the black paper, things change.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And so you really just try to, like with the paper, you try to make that as best you can. And often you edit. I mean, you can see with this, one, with these kind of, hot dog looking forms, that she really was still trying to figure out the shading as she was doing the finished version. Because there are some that have really tiny, like the lower part was where she started, and she was making them small, and it was taking too long. And so she started to space them out more, and I told her, use bigger triangles for the darker areas. Because it was like, the articulation of the form is really good on the bottom three. But, within the time limit of the assignment, it's like you don't need to do it that way to successfully complete this assignment. And if you had more time and this were your artwork, then you could do it. But it's an assignment that happens within a 2-week period, so you kind of have to make decisions to get it done on time. That's actually really, it's part of the lesson in terms of process, that when you have a deadline, you have to get it done as best you can within the deadline. And sometimes you make sacrifices in terms of either sophistication, and like in which process you use to make sure that you can get it done on time. Because that's when you're working and you're being paid, you can't turn it in late, because then you're not going to work, because people will, clients will abandon you. If you're a junior designer and your boss will say like, you know what, we were relying on you, and now we've learned, like in this case, that we can't. And even if you manage to keep your job after you've just totally blown a deadline, they're going to remember that. It'll take time to like build your reputation back up. So meeting deadlines is important, and things always change. Sometimes, people flake out, or, somebody else who is a part of the process doesn't get their stuff done. Just don't, it's not necessarily fatal if you miss a deadline, but it's not a good look. So I'm sure that doesn't need to be explained too much. Okay. Well, if you don't have any any more drawings to show me or questions, then I think we can end here now. And I will.
Duffy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
The audio cut out, or do you think something happened on my end? Did anybody else contact you for the last couple minutes and say? No. Okay. All right, then
I saw your message that you're not getting audio, but nobody else did.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Have a good one.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, Duffy. Goodbye.
You're very welcome.